Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard this afternoon, this evening, as we get set up to discuss what was and is still a pretty big day of news across the NHL, specifically here in oil country, where the Oilers have suffered a big time defeat in the signing quest of the three remaining players that we have had on the docket this offseason. The defeat, temporary, could be permanent. We'll discuss all that in a matter of moments. Of course, I want to preface this with the notice that you likely will not hear on Leon Draisaitl's contract until at least Wednesday next week, as this offer sheet pandemonium takes hold in Edmonton for the next 7 days or less. As Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg may, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, be headed to the St. Louis Blues. Before we get there, if you're new to the channel, I encourage you to check out the channel. That's number one. And then consider hitting that subscribe button here on Dolynny TV. That would be greatly appreciated as we move towards the new NHL season. News is picking up following the Hlinka Gretzky tournament coming to an end. So, of course, if you want to stay tuned, hit that subscribe button. And with that as well, if you're enjoying today's topic, make sure to like the video. I don't think I asked that, so sorry, that's weird. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts, right? Is this a bad move by Holloway Broberg, bad move by their agents? Is this a bad move overall by the St. Louis Blues, or incompetence on the Oilers' part? We'll take all angles and discuss that here in the video. Let's get going, shall we? As what do we know today? Well, I've broken it down loosely here for you to begin the video. The Oilers have suffered, like I said, a defeat. It is, to some degree, an absolute disaster based on kind of all the factors we'll discuss in this video. That is, of course, where the title comes from today. The St. Louis Blues today tendering offer sheets to Edmonton's Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. So, in a way, a defeat, a disaster, because this seemed to be all a cakewalk, right? As far as we knew, on the 2 Mutts podcast source that we got on the weekend, right? They were sitting there saying, everything's hunky-dory in Edmonton, perfect, let's go, everything's going to fall into place just fine. And now all of a sudden, things are falling apart at the seams. You got the news on Evander Kane, it was followed up today, and then this morning, before a guy can even get to work, it's Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg signing joint, offer sheets, I guess you could say, dual offer sheets with the same team, the St. Louis Blues. So for more on that, we turn to the man that knows the most, that being Bob Stauffer of 630 Ched. Regarding the St. Louis offer sheets on Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, this is business. Blues are deploying a mechanism within the CBA. Now that too, you could say Holloway and Broberg are deploying a mechanism within the CBA to get more out of the Oilers than they originally, at that 1.1, 1.3 that was being reported, were possibly going to get from new general manager and new head office tandem between Bowman and Jeff Jackson. So the Oilers have a week to match. That I did mention as well, right? It's going to be pandemonium here in oil country for the next week, as every single day, by the minute, things change as the Oilers try to figure out how to coordinate an attack to battle back what could possibly be a defeat in losing some very valuable back-to-back first overall draft or first round draft picks. If the Oilers match on a player, he can't be traded for a year. As Bob Stauffer says, lots in play in this scenario we got going on here. So I will say there is more to today's video that you will be able to catch tomorrow morning. A little bit more of a sporadic kind of discussion. I've got that queued up for tomorrow as we go. So the details, the offer sheet numbers that you need to be aware of. Why is this a problem for the Oilers? Well, if we're talking a combined 2.4 is what we thought million it could get done for Broberg and Holloway, that is now, get ready to spit out your chocolate milk you're listening with, 4.58 and 2.29. You combine that together, that's about 6.88, I guess would be the number, 6.87 million in cap space that the Oilers have to now figure out, and not just for this year, but next year. That is why I mentioned right off the top, you will not hear news on Leon Draisaitl immediately here anymore, because the Oilers now have this complication to immediately take care of, but this also affects next year's numbers. I know a lot of people are continuing to tell me that the Leon Draisaitl contract is done. I don't care if it's done. This, if it's not officially signed, is going to throw a wrench into it because you now have lost, right? If you're locking in maybe a couple million for each guys next year, you're now losing a combined $6.87 million that you were probably counting on to some degree, some percentage of that having available for Leon Draisaitl's extension. Elliot Friedman goes on to add more info. Again, the matching, right? 7 days. If they don't match, they will get a second round pick for Broberg and or a third rounder for Holloway, right? They don't have to match both. They don't have to match either. They can match one of the two. St. Louis made a trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That was the early shock this morning. What the heck are they doing trading picks? Well, when St. Louis reacquired their own second-round pick in 2025, it became quite apparent that there was going to be something going on, and Broberg becomes the target, and so does Holloway. You must have your own picks to do an offer sheet, so clearly those that know the NHL cap system, know the restricted free agency side of the CBA would know that was likely about to happen, even though it pretty much happened simultaneous. Gotta sneeze here. Oh, bless me. My apologies. We move on. The Oilers are tight to the cap, and AAV signed here, obviously much higher than Edmonton was offering. Lots to absorb, lots to process. We continue here. That was Bob Stauffer's sentiment as well. So for the Oilers, a big day, and it was only about 9 a.m. at that point. So we move on to some other notes, right? That is your news for today. That is what you know. Well, the other notes, the other stuff that pertains to what happened here today is the Oilers have a new general manager in Stan Bowman. I don't know how much it's been floated that Stan Bowman used to be the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, who, well, let's just say happen to be pretty close, pretty related to the old St. Louis Blues in terms of division, the conference, all that. There might not be as much friendliness between Bowman and Armstrong as may has been reported between Holland and Armstrong. So again, when it comes to willingness to make the move, and you got to look at the other characters maybe in the St. Louis Blues office, willingness to make the move was a little bit more there than maybe prior it had been. And of course, too, with Jeff Jackson splitting the duties, maybe there's a little bit more freedom for Stan Bowman, and that was maybe perceived weakness from Doug Armstrong's point of view. Again, that's all speculation. Take it that. I'm just giving you as many angles on this as possible. The players had to agree. That is another angle of attack. You have to look at this. The players decided to do this. Both Broberg and Holloway decided. Just because St. Louis offered doesn't mean they had to accept. They decided to accept. That is a tough go, obviously, because now they're holding the Oilers' feet to the fire a little bit here, saying, give us the money we want, or we're gone. And yes, the Oilers do get somewhat compensated for it, but again, if you're talking about 2 top 15 draft picks in an NHL draft, and you're getting a second and third back combined for both, when Broberg was just about to step into a top 4 role in Edmonton, again, this is pointed out by Patrick from the Oilers Fanatic, 4.58 is top 4 money, so not the worst thing if the Oilers match here. And obviously, Holloway was slated for a pay raise at some point, and he has guaranteed himself that at the bare minimum now. Secondary to the players agreeing, I think you have to look at this from an agent's perspective. You've got 2 high-end prospect pros now that you really, I think both agents probably felt they needed to move on a little bit here, needed to get something out of. Again, agents are part of the business, and they do need their pay cut as well. And I think the higher the number of dollars in the contract, the bigger the cut for the agents. So there was a little bit of motivation there on their perspective as well to get a bigger AAV, and that they have done, signing the offer sheets in conjunction with both players with the St. Louis Blues. The other side to this that I don't think has been reported very much today that needs to be talked about at least a little bit in today's video, Broberg's history with the Oilers. It's been up, down, all around, and mostly good up until this year, where it appeared, at least for a few months, there was some unease between him and his agent and the general manager and the Oilers front office in terms of asking for a trade. Right? Broberg wanted out at one point this year, ended up becoming a star defenseman on a Cinderella run for himself personally to the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final inside the top 4 of the Edmonton Oilers defense, scoring 3 points in 10 games. The problem being is there might have still been some of those sentiments of, do I really want to stay in Edmonton? And if I'm going to do it, am I going to do it for a low cost? Especially when maybe I play poorly for a couple games and I'm back in the bottom 6 instead of the top 4. So that is where I can see from Broberg's perspective, this makes a lot more sense than Holloway's perspective. Again, I mean, Holloway appears to love being an Oiler and love everything about Edmonton, but you got to remember, he is too also a Southern Alberta kid from Bragg Creek, so maybe there's some underlying sentiments there where it's not the worst thing not to be an Oilers player, if you get where I'm going. Again, that's all pure speculation, just trying to give you as many different looks and different vantage points on this as possible. But as we go, it's a big news day in Edmonton, and there's tons to talk about. We've already gone 11 minutes here, and I've probably got another 15 if I really wanted to. Things to consider on this front as well. I've already heard and seen a whole bunch of chatter about, wow, this is a failure on Stan Bowman. When I say absolute disaster, this is top down for the Oilers. You are facing down getting a second and third for 2 top 15 picks. I mentioned that earlier, yes? Well, that's failure on an organization if that's all you can turn it into, right? There's a reason we look so poorly on what the organization did and how they drafted Jesse Puljujärvi where they did, right? So not to throw Jesse Puljujärvi under the bus, this is not throwing him, that's throwing the organization under the bus because that was poor asset management through and through. And well, guess what? That does not just fall today's news on Stan Bowman. You got to remember, there was a time about 4 weeks ago where Oilers fans were riding high, myself included, saying, man, that Jeff Jackson guy is incredible. But oddly enough, in Jeff Jackson signing everybody that wanted to be in Edmonton, magically didn't sign Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. So again, yes, Stan Bowman's had some time to work here, but Jeff Jackson was cooking and didn't take care of this. So again, there's more to the story than just blaming the new GM for a move that you don't like from another team. Other moves that have to be made, that's another thing to be considered, whether it be trading CC, sending guys down, whatever you have to do to be cap compliant, whether you decide to match the offer sheets or you don't. Right now, we're operating on a basis of just we got 7 days to get this done. That's where this video is outlined. Obviously, the Kane LTIR takes some room in this. The assets to move money and how far is too far. Those things may seem, what the heck are you talking about there, Tyson? The video I'm referring to that you'll see tomorrow morning here on the channel is simply a little bit more of a sporadic discussion, kind of a point of tension for a lot of Oilers fans around moving Darnell Nurse. I know there's a whole bunch of factors there. No matter what side of the equation you're from, you will probably tell me A, it's long overdue, or B, it's impossible to do. That said, in terms of impact to the roster and moving around pieces and money, Darnell Nurse would be your best bang for your buck to move him out. Again, though, you've got assets to move the money, right? It's to use another analogy like I did yesterday. Imagine your cheap uncle is lined up to buy your beater winter car, and you know what? You got a deal in place, couple $100, good to go. And then your uncle finds out that you've only got a few days until the city tows that winter beater off the street and fines you $500. Well, now your uncle's offer just went from a couple $100 in your pocket to you're going to give him $250 to take it off your hands, or he could let you pay the full $500 fine to the city. So again, right, this is where, you know, the Oilers have always been at a point with Darnell Nurse where it's going to cost them to move that money, or at least that is the perception out there based on the public opinion from fans across the NHL, right? So when you look at assets to move money, you thought it would cost assets before, especially if you're like, oh my God, how much would it take to get Darnell Nurse out of Edmonton? That price, if the Oilers at all ever even explore that option, has just gone up astronomically, okay? So that's why that's on there. And how far is too far? Because I would say moving Darnell Nurse to solve your cap problems, magically make these offer sheets go away and sign these players to the new deals of 4.58 and 2 point whatever the heck is a little bit too far, okay? Like, let's calm down a moment here and not get into that. We'll have a better discussion on that in the morning, but you get where I'm going. So there's a lot going on in oil country today, and this next 7 days is going to be absolute pandemonium. So buckle up. We've got an absolute disaster on our hands, and it's going to be interesting to see how Bowman and Jackson there handle it in the Oilers front office, because this is something we have not seen in oil country in a dang long time. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here over the next 7 days. Friends, this is Dolynny TV. Thanks for being aboard on an extended edition. I once again will ask you, with my stuffed up voice, to consider hitting that subscribe button here on the channel. That'd be greatly appreciated. For those of you back home watching every time, been subscribed for months, years, decades, thank you so much. Appreciate you. We will chat more in the morning. For now, unless there's breaking news tonight, I'm up on out of here.